and I'd like to welcome everybody to the third part of our webinar series here on Residency Interview Week. I'm Dr. David Tolentino, and I'd like to, as I said, welcome you here to this session. Before we get started, I'd like to just go through our agenda here tonight. Let's do some welcome and some housekeeping notes, and I'll do our introduction, and we'll go from there. As you clicked in here this evening, you saw that our webinar is being recorded. This recording is going to be emailed to all attendees and will be posted on the AACOM Council on Residency Placement webpage shortly. All webinar participants are in listen-only mode. So if you experience any technical issues during the webinar, please use the chat feature and we will assist you. Please submit questions for the panelists as well as for me via the Q&A feature. We have panelists, myself, and some others who are helping to answer your questions that are submitted by the feature, by your write-in questions, or we may answer them live depending on our time here this evening. Again, I'm David Tolentino. I'm the Associate Dean for Clinical Affairs here at Campbell University School of Osteopathic Medicine. I'm an internal medicine physician by trade. Been in this role since 2016. Prior to this, I was, for 10 years, I was a regional assistant dean at Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine and wore a hat there for the last 2.5 years as the executive assistant dean for clinical education. All this to let you all know that all I've ever done in academics really is 3rd and 4th year education, okay? So I do know a little bit something about residency interviews and getting you all matched and residency, obviously. I'll turn it over to the panelists here and let them introduce themselves. I'll start with Dr. Elward.
Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Dr. Elward. I go by Dr. Nick because it's just easier to say. So I am an Associate Residency Program Director in Physical Medicine and Rehab at the University of Kentucky.
Thank you, Dr. Elward. Ms. Baez-Martinez?
Hi, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Aria Baez. I'm a GME Institutional Coordinator at Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. And I'm very happy to be here. I've been part of academic medicine for almost 16 years.
Great, thank you for being here, ma'am. Dr. Medicella?
Hi everyone, my name's Sumeda. I am an intern at Akron Children's Hospital. Been in Ohio and the Midwest all my life and very happy where I ended up, just out of your shoes here, so happy to help.
Fantastic, thank you for being here, ma'am. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Rhodes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Rhodes. I am a second-year psychiatry resident at Largo Medical Center in Largo, Florida, also serving as the inpatient chief resident at the moment. I apologize, my camera will be on in a few minutes once I am at the proper hospital. I'm picking up extra duties right now. So anyway, nice to meet all of you all and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. You just make sure you get there safely and join us when you can, sir. All right, so some of these questions came to us from y'all in the first couple of sessions at the end of last week, and some of them were prepared ahead of time and sent to us over the course of the past couple weeks. So the first one has to do of sending thank you emails and letters after interviews. And I'll go ahead with Dr. Elward here. What do you think, sir, in answering some of these, the first question here about sending thank you emails and letters after interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, I think they're a good idea. You will have some programs that are very upfront and they say, hey, don't send us a thank you letter, don't thank us, don't send us anything. If a program is very blatant about that, then obviously that's kind of what they want. I would advise not sending them. But if you do not have a program that mentions anything, I think sending a letter or an email is very appropriate. With COVID, everything transitioned to virtual interviews. And I think a lot of people thought that the interview process and interview day became easier. I would say it's probably just as hard, if not maybe even a little bit more taxing to not only the program leadership, but then our program coordinators who are managing everything and breakout rooms. And it's a lot of work. And so a real quick thank you, especially if you're interested in the program, mentioning something specific. So you might have saw on the welcome slide, I have my specialty is stroke rehabilitation. And so if you were to mention, hey, really enjoyed our conversations on this, or if we had a specific discussion about a hobby that we talked about, make it unique. But I definitely recommend now sending some type of correspondence. Now, when it comes to an email versus a written letter, I don't necessarily, in my opinion, I don't think it matters. I would argue that a handwritten thank you card shows that you put in some work and you did your homework as to where can I send it, etc. But I think some post-interview communication can certainly help you.
I like that, Dr. Elwert. You also bring up, sir, about specifically mentioning something about that day that particularly touched you and referring to that. I think that's a wonderful point there too. Ms. Baez-Martinez, what do you think, ma'am?
I really think it depends on the applicant. I am not opposed to thank you notes. In fact, I like to, if I receive one, I like to add it to the applicant's documents, especially if it's handwritten and includes a picture. I've received in previous programs, I received thank you notes with even the picture of the applicant, just for us to remember who is sending it. But I also have to consider that these applicants are already spending enough money with applications.
Sure.
If they're going to in-person interviews, which some programs or the vast majority are going back to that modality, they're spending this money. So they have to consider also that will be an extra unless they decide to budget it with their the money they want to spend during interview season. Because they do, even though it's a simple postage that will cost less than $1, but less than $1 times how many programs they want to send those thank you.
Absolutely. Postage does add up. That's a great point. Dr. Medicharla, you just went through this, ma'am. What do you think?
So I personally did send thank you emails. I never sent anything by mail necessarily, but I did send thank you emails, and I actually did receive a couple responses. I would say that it's important to also include the program coordinator, not to go into the next question too much, but program coordinators are doing quite a bit to make interview day happen. And they are very much involved in pre-communication and post-communication after your interviews too. So definitely make sure that they get their well-deserved kudos on that day. Kind of touching on that last question about how long it should be, right in the middle, I think mine was probably like 1 to 2 paragraphs at the most if I was super interested. Kind of going back to some of the other answers about touching on some of those unique parts of the interview, why you're interested, what sort of features kind of stuck out from that program that you feel like you would fit into, things like that. But don't make it like a personal statement. We all know that we have enough emails to read, especially during post-interview season. So make sure that it kind of hits the points, that you're succinct and effective with your words. And so there's not really like a length that is too long, but I would definitely try to play it by ear and maybe not go longer than a couple paragraphs.
Fantastic. Dr. Rhodes, does your opinion agree? Do you have anything different, sir, to add?
Sure. Can you all see me now? I'm trying to access this from my vehicle. Yes. Okay. Hi. I can't see if you see me or not. Yes. So essentially, I'd kind of agree with all that. I would say also that I just really focused on follow-up emails, thank you emails. I really tried to make mine only a few lines at most, just because everybody has so much to read and so much to do it as it is. So what I always did, and I'm kind of OCD in general, but I would make like template emails, and then I would remember when I was preparing for my interviews, like the things that I liked for the schools, the things that I not for the schools, for the programs, and things that I liked that happened during the interview, maybe specific things the residents said or this or that. So I would kind of sprinkle those in really to my templates and made that a lot faster, especially because, you know, now that everything post-COVID, all the interviews are pretty much done over, you know, teleconferencing here over Zoom or whatever service they're using. So, you know, I just really tried to kind of use that generally because now everybody's applying to so many, you know, and there's so much more stuff to read. So yeah, I would just be brief, but have something specific in it. But honestly, nothing's going to replace a good interview, and nothing's going to, and I would encourage anybody who can, like any programs that have like extra resident meetings and stuff, do that too, because you can specifically also follow up with those residents. Like if they have like chief meeting things you can go to and talk to them, because then they'll be talking to the directors as well and kind of proposing that. So have ones kind of made already that you're thinking about sending to directors and coordinators, but also to those residents when you get those opportunities as well.
Dr. Rhodes, you bring up a great point. You know, taking note of what you said is absolutely that's absolutely important. You know, the comments or the specific experiences that you have, that's definitely something important to note. And as y'all are starting to keep track, maybe keeping a spreadsheet of where you are interviewing, the places where you're offered your interviews and where you've interviewed, you know, make sure that you keep little notes about things that you identified about the program, you know, unique things that you really like, maybe some things that might be challenges about the program, but certainly notes that, you know, if you sent them a thank you note or if you sent them an email, I think that's important to make, you know, to make that distinguishing difference, because you might, as Ms. Baez-Martinez said here, she may make a note of that, you know, she received a handwritten card from you, or maybe an email. I think in this day and age, with all the interviews being virtual for the most part, I think email suffices. I think that's fine. If a program says we do not want any communication, I think you have to be very respectful of that to some extent. Certainly, if they reach out to you, that's different. You know, if they reach out to you, it's okay to respond to that. Okay, these are great points that the panelists are making tonight. I know Dr. Meticherla made a mention here about the post-interview communication being sent to the program director or the program coordinator. Trust me, the program coordinators are interviewing you. You may not think so. You may not have time carved out necessarily with a coordinator, but you better mind your P's and Q's when you're interacting with a coordinator, whether it's by Zoom or even if it's by email, just your communications, or by the phone, because they are already assessing you. Okay, so I'll start with Ms. Baez-Martinez here. What do you think about post-interview communication being sent to a program director or program coordinator?
I think that it should be sent to the program coordinator, and let me explain why. Okay. Let's be honest. Program directors receive tons and tons of emails. There are still practicing physicians, and they are extremely busy, especially during if they're teaching in medical school, teaching with the residents, their practice and everything. So they are sometimes that message gets lost in the cyberspace. Just to put it, it just goes down the chain of incoming messages. So you could direct the message to the program director, to the residents, to the faculty, and to the program coordinator, but just send it to the program coordinator, because they will ultimately send out the message to everybody else, give out the message that you said thank you, that you were doing the follow-up and everything. And what is been said is correct. We as program coordinators do part of the interview process. I know I see some things that my program directors don't see, or my residents don't. And when we do our meetings, we talk to each other. So these notes help us to establish those connections.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Dr. Rhodes, what's your take on post-interview communication being sent to the program director or the program coordinator?
Yes, I would say it really is a little bit program dependent, exactly how large the program is. If you can kind of figure out some of that context, like how busy they may be, if they'll see it. One thing that I remember that I would do is that kind of piggybacking off the last point that was made is if I felt like maybe it was going to be too difficult for the director to respond directly, or I felt like, my email would get lost in the weeds, so to speak, I might actually make individualized thank yous or little post letters and make let's say 3 of them, one for the residents, one for the coordinator. I might just write out the coordinators thank you in the actual email itself, but then actually attach as different files a thank you specifically for the director and for the residents, because I think for me, at least, I'd like to think that showed an extra effort on my part. Like, look, I took time to really think about the director and the residents and the coordinator, and then so it wouldn't be lost kind of in the weeds too. Like that coordinator could still get those to the right people,
Sure.
So that was kind of a method that I used.
Very good. Very good. Dr. Elwer, how about you, sir?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you have 2 different takes on the same thing, and I think it is definitely applicant dependent. But I think what you've seen is that the program coordinator directs it all, and so really, if you are going to be doing handwritten letters, I've seen some people put it in a big old envelope and then have little letters individually addressed. So you might have, Joe Smith, and then another person, Nick Elwert, and it is sent to the program coordinator, and then they disperse it. I think what Dr. Rhodes was mentioning about individual thank yous is that it allows you to be unique and have a unique tie, kind of what I mentioned in my first response. When all is said and done, I think, number one is I would have the same process for every program, unless you have one specific program that stands above the rest and you want to do individual letters to every single person. But you really want to make sure, like Dr. Tolentino said, make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. Because if you are, communicating with a program coordinator, and let's say you're late on stuff, or you're not, you're not responding in a timely manner, well, then that starts to, incidentally or not incidentally, starts to question oh, why is this person late on their correspondence? And then it calls into from a professionalism aspect. And so, those things come up when you were in our rank meeting. Ms. Baez Martinez said, we add the thank you correspondence to our, Leslie is our program coordinator. She marks hey, sent some communication, after the interviews. And, it is, I don't want you guys to take this as, if you don't send a thank you card, you're not going to match at your top program. That's not it. But any single thing can help you when, you're come to that rank list meeting.
That's a great point. And Dr. Elwer, you also made a good point about, keeping track if you did a handwritten note or an email. I know I alluded to that earlier. Handwriting, if you do not have good handwriting or good penmanship, please send an email. Okay. I see our panelists are smiling about that. Listen, I know that, we're physicians, y'all are future physicians, and, there's that sort of that expectation, I guess, that you have messy handwriting, or certainly messy signatures, right? But, and of course, with electronic medical record, it's okay because everything is typed out or point and click and all of that. But definitely, if you have, if your penmanship is not great, definitely send email. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for answering that question. Dr. Medicherla, I'm going to come back to you, ma'am. I think this is a great question here. I see this one a lot about indicating your intention to rank a program highly in a follow-up email. This question did come up towards the end of one of our sessions last week. What's your take on this? Did you do this?
I'd say that it can quickly become a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I would be very careful. I would strongly discourage anyone to write that they are their top program or that they're their second choice. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people would write second choice, but I would be very careful to write to multiple programs that they are your top program, like using that word choice. Program directors can talk, associate program directors can talk. In the DO world, especially, we're a very small world, we're a very connected world. So I think just being very careful with your intention and to not falsely advertise, but then to also not downplay the fact that you truly are interested in their program, if that is your intention. I definitely made sure to highlight some of those things that I was extra excited about, that I maybe saw on my sub-I or an elective rotation if I had the chance to do it at that institution, just to show that I was taking some of the extra steps that I wanted to be part of their program as a resident. But I know some of my classmates kind of fell into a bad place when they were going about, this sort of balance between making sure that the program knows that they're interested, but then also not going too far with it. Because if you tell a program that they are your first choice and you don't match there because they know that they rank you very highly, then that's not going to look well on you at all. And then just also make sure that you are just not biting yourself by writing certain words. But I don't think it's wrong to allow a program to understand that you are truly interested and that you're taking the extra steps to know more about their program, what they offer, what the residents have to say about it, what you've enjoyed about it, and how you would fit in.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Metrella. I agree. At the end of the second, there was a theme that popped up in Miss Lisa Shelbert's second series there last week, and it was honesty is the best policy, right? And if a place that you're interviewing, I mean, if you like it, but it's not your number one choice, say it's your number one choice. Like you said, I mean, the DO population is it is small. Now I know, what is it, one in four medical students are is a DO student, but I'm telling you, you make a very good point. Program directors, clinical chairs, associate deans for graduate medical education. A lot of people that we have good memories, and so that does tend to follow y'all as you move along. So I'll go to Dr. Rhodes here. What do you think, sir, about in a follow-up email, would you ever indicate your intention to rank a program?
So I think there are ways to say it without directly saying it.
Yes.
That's kind of the angle that I would use. Now, granted, if you have gone on an audition interview, if this is someplace that you might have, like, let's say you rotated at as a third year, then audition fourth year, everybody well, like, the communication can be a little different, a little more, everybody, it's a little more casual. You want to keep it professional, but, you can be a little bit more forthright, I believe. However, I think, overall, general good consensus is general good policy is to not say directly, this is my top choice. This is, you never want to say second choice. Nobody wants to be chose second. So I would say it's more along the lines, the things that I would say is that, if I was following up with it, I would say along the lines of, I can really see myself there. I can, I really enjoy the culture. I believe that this would be a very supportive environment, things along those lines. So you can kind of show them that you're already forward thinking about your integration into the program. And I think that can be just as actually probably stronger than that, because you're really also showing that you aren't just, wanting a spot somewhere, that you really see yourself thriving there and that you have something to contribute as well. On a secondary point, I think there's also something about not wanting to seem desperate. too.
Yep.
Because, you know, you never want to come off as, you know, cocky or arrogant or anything, but you do want to have a decent amount of confidence because, you know, you have worked hard, you have done all these tests, you've gone into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. You know, you've worked for this for years and years and years. And, you know, by this point that you're getting these interviews, you've passed boards and done these things. You're pretty knowledgeable. You have a good skill set, hopefully. You know, you've hopefully had good rotations and people have ranked you, you know, written nice things about you. So, you know, I don't think that you should come across as desperate either, because really you want them, but you also want them to want you too, you know, and if you make them think like, oh, I got, you know, if you seem very, very adamant, I think there is a little bit, you can be over eager, and that might show, well, why, it would make me think, well, why is this person so like, are they worried they're not going to get anywhere else? Is there something in the background that I'm not aware of? Are they going to be like this when I'm actually working with them? You know, because that's the thing is if you're at the point of getting an interview, they're already looking at you as a potential colleague and resident, you know, so you need to show them that side of you, not the student who's very, very, very worried about not getting a spot, as we all were. You know, you're stressed about it, obviously. We all were. But, you know, I think you need to show them what you're going to be like as a physician there. And, you know, and that's really what's going to sell you the best.
Very good. Great points. Great points. You know, before I'm going to probably jump ahead to the next question here, but I didn't know if Dr. Elward or Ms. Baez-Martinez wanted to comment on the ranking a program highly in a follow-up email before we go to number 4 here with the indicating a program. Still interested.
The only thing I would add is if you do elect to send a message, which I think for your top 5 or 6 programs, you know, I think there's certainly a way to do it. Be like, you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't get a response back, right? Because there are rules and regulations as to what programs can say and vice versa. If you get a message back that said, hey, that's great, we really enjoyed your time here, let us know if you have questions, don't like, you know, go into, or your anxiety peaks of, oh my gosh, they didn't tell me you know, they didn't show me the love like I was showing them the love, just because there's things you can and cannot say. So if you do that, you know, just don't be totally distraught if you don't get back a message that says a program that you're their number 1, just because we can't say that.
Very good. Any comments, Ms. Baez-Martinez, before I move?
I echo what everybody has said. Understand that us on the program side, we cannot say to any candidate, oh, yes, you're going to be in the ranking list. Oh, yeah, we're going to rank you in our top spot and everything just to secure somebody. We, like Dr. Elward said, I mean, we still have to follow rules and regulations. There's certain ways, like Dr. Rhodes mentioned, of mentioning that you are interested without saying, I'm going to rank you, because that, for me, when I see that, it's a double-edged sword, because it can mean, like Dr. Medicharlo said, I mean, it's a slippery slope. You can either get high or you just kill your chances. So I prefer not to mention it directly and just follow the regulations.
Absolutely. That's truly a match violation. If you tell us a student, we're gonna rank you, you know, this number. So absolutely. All right. Definitely want to keep our programs out of trouble. We also want to keep our students who are interviewing out of trouble, for sure. Okay. Dr. Rhodes, how would you indicate to a program that you're still interested?
Well, I mean, I think it all comes down to the wording. Like I said, I like to make a lot of templates, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, all those sorts of things. You know, so I think it's really coming down to the wording and those, you know, thanking them for taking time to interview me, you know, telling them like specific things about their program. I mean, you should have done before you even like, put in interviews and paid the money to apply, you should have done a pretty deep dive on the programs already. So, you should have some pretty specific information about them. So I think, again, following up with that you just, you show them that, hey, I've taken time to look at you. I've taken time to learn things about you. Let me tell you about why I believe that I am a good fit and why, I believe that I can provide something and that I believe I will thrive here as well. So it's, you want to present it as a symbiotic relationship. But I think even again, like, not obviously saying top spot, anything like that, ranking this, but, just really saying, I can, I very much, I hope to see you, hear from you in the future, things like that. I think that really, that one email, even if it's just a few lines, you can really, if you're succinct and smart about it, you can really put everything that you want in there, hit the highlights, but don't be verbose, don't go over the top. And I think that's going to show the best, because really that's what they're going to want out of residents too. Somebody's going to work hard, get the job done, be quick, but be thorough and accurate at the same time, and then, I think that's really the best.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. Dr. Elwood, as a associate program director, what do you think, sir?
Yeah, so, to what Dr. Rhodes mentioned, making sure that, you're specific, one, with your communication, but then also, sending a message to the program coordinator, the residents, and just, again, you want to be fresh in those individuals' minds. And so if it happens to go a couple of weeks and you're like, all right, I really like this program, maybe you send a message to the program coordinator about a question that you had. Now, you want to make sure that your question isn't generic, that can be found online. You want to make sure it's specific to say, hey, you mentioned this about research. Can you give me a little bit more? So kind of what I did when I was in your shoes is I kind of had a list of things like, all right, these are the questions that I'm going to ask. And they were very specific questions about the program so that they knew that I was, I've done the research, I had paid attention. I think templates are very good, as Dr. Rhodes said. I will warn you, is just make sure you proofread. So for example, we are in Lexington, Kentucky, and we have another PM&R program in Louisville, Kentucky. So when I get post communication about the program in Louisville, well, I'm in Lexington, that's an obvious, hey, this person just copied and pasted and then, calls into question, did they actually like Louisville or did they like Lexington? And so templates are good. I'm not saying that. I think that's great advice by Dr. Rhodes, but just please make sure that you proofread and that you are sending the intended communication to the right program, because it unfortunately does happen where, you can get your details a little mixed up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on onto the next slide, Dr. Elwood, I'm going to stay with you here for a second, sir, because you talked about this in one of your replies. The timing of post-interview communication. How soon should we reach out to the programs after the interview? What do you think about that? Pretty soon, right?
Yeah, so I would do it pretty relatively soon. So if you're interviewing on like a Thursday, Friday, so at the end of the week, I would say early the following week to just say, hey, really enjoyed my time. A couple of particular, really looking forward to further communication. You don't want to let it go, weeks on end, especially if it's a program that you're really interested in. I would say at max, I would wait a week before sending out some communication, and probably a week is pushing it. So very soon after the interview, I would send your post communication. And then again, if you're sending, I get a lot of questions of, well, how frequent should I send the communication? So I send a thank you. Well, then how frequent do I send it? If you're messaging me every single day, that's probably a little too much. But if you're, sending a message every couple of weeks or, maybe every other week, it doesn't also have to be the same person. You might send our program coordinator a question, and then me a question, and then our program director a question. Again, what you want is, if it's a program that you want to go to, when that program leadership and residents and whoever's a part of their rank meeting, when they go in and they're like, oh yeah, this person has reached out to me. And then you have another person, oh, this person's reached out to me. And then you have another person that says that gives off the impression which if you were doing that, you were trying to impress people to say, hey, I'm really interested in your program. And you've done that if you reach out to multiple people.
Thank you for that, Dr. Elwert. Ms. Martinez, same two questions. Dr. Elwert addressed both of those there about, the difference between follow-up and pestering. So I'll ask you that for the group here, what advice do you have on the timing of post-interview communication? And then what do you think are the best follow-up practices in terms of, what's the difference between good follow-up and pestering?
You just threw me against the wall here because I do not have like a concrete answer for this. Honestly, I've seen it where thank yous come an hour even after, especially if it's a Zoom interview, an hour after interview finished. Oh, I would like to send a thank you for the opportunity to interview with the program. Yeah. And then sometimes the day after they send a question, just, as a follow-up. So honestly, and timing wise, I do concur with Dr. Elwert about, if the interview was a Monday or Tuesday or even a Thursday, Friday, just a couple of days after, the max a week. And then obviously they have really other questions just to communicate with the program leadership and ask those questions. We want our students to make the best impression, but also have all the information they need to make the most important decision of their lives, because this is what they're doing when they grow up. And I like to ask that to all the candidates when they come to interview with our programs. I like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's okay to just start here first, and then when you finish a program, if you want to do something else, you can jump into that. If not, and that's my way to just kind of assessing the candidate and the program at the same time, seeing what they need, what we can offer. Because sometimes questions come up after the fact of the interview. Oh, I heard Dr. So-and-so really is into research. What kind of research does this person does? And, these type of questions come up after the fact.
Okay. There's a question in the chat, and I'm going to stick with you on this one, Ms. Bez Martinez, because you're probably a part of this, but a part of creating the rank list as a program. Who is a part of that?
I like to include, obviously, besides our program director, our associate program director, all the faculty that interview, especially if you have a very small program. For example, I help support the O&M program at Lake Granbury Medical Center, and it's a small program, and we had the program director, we had the associate program director, we had the faculty. We also had the residents, because here's the other thing about interview processes. It's good for the programs to involve the residents, because the residents see one thing that the leadership does not see and can give a good assessment when the ranking comes to play. So in short, everyone, if it's a bigger program, then the program might decide on just the people who interview throughout the whole season.
Great, thank you. Dr. Metacherla, I want to ask you a question here about advice for post-interview follow-up. What are some of the other advice that you have, having gone through this just recently here last year, ma'am?
I agree with a lot of what's been said already. I never went past probably 72 hours when it came to post-interview communication. And I think, once you've done your interview and you're still kind of fresh in their mind and they're fresh in your mind, you're able to pull in some of those unique conversations that you had. It's probably better to do it sooner rather than later. But definitely proofread and make sure that your template is not generic and that you are addressing it to the right person with the right information.
Okay.
The other thing that I would say is if you feel like you answered, or if you feel like you've asked all of your questions at your interview, I think sometimes interviews that come up later on will kind of spark questions that you might have had for a program that you had already interviewed for, if that makes sense. So reaching out again to residents, program directors, anyone really who is a part of that process will also continue to not only have your questions answered, but then to continue to have your name sort of thrown around in the mix there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anybody else? I think that kind of ties in some of the most common mistake applicants make when following up with a program for an interview. Does anybody else have, before we go on to a couple of these other questions, there's some really good professionalism follow-up questions for interviewing. Dr. Rhodes, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll make one comment. Well, first off, since I'm probably the major proponent here of templates, I do want to reiterate, yes, make sure you're following up on them. They are very specific. Templates are a good springboard, but make sure you do proofread those, before you send them out. And, I would reiterate, the way I did it, I think the 72-hour rule is a good one. I always knew if I did my interviews between a Monday and a Thursday, by the end of that week, by that Friday, I would be sending out that email. If my interview was on a Friday, it would be sent by Monday. And the other thing I would say, as far as follow-up questions, of course, it depends on where in the interview season you are, like how long you wait, because if interview season is going to finish in like 1 week, you better get it in quickly. But I want to stress, sincerity when you ask those questions. If they see you send it, I imagine if, of course I don't work. Well, anyway, the point is that when you make a question, for them, don't send a question that you think, oh, they're going to roll their eyes at this. Like, why are you asking this? Make sure it's something specific, something you're really interested in, and something that, they would want information they would give you either about the program or research or whatever. So don't just send a question to send a question. Make sure you send a question with a purpose, because I think sincerity is another quality that's really going to kind of, make you stand out, because then they know you are really not just eager, but that you are really interested in what that program offers.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. In some of these additional Q&As, there were some really good, some good practical questions here. I think I'm gonna run around some of these questions and just ask our panelists here some of the questions in the remaining time that we have. Second looks and programs locking in their lists. I believe programs have until February 28th to certify a rank order list. But second looks, can you tell us a little bit about how those work? I'm going to ask Dr. Elwert, as being an APD here, can you tell us a little bit about how a second look would work in your program, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our program, our second looks they are essentially a modified virtual open house. So what we do is we have about 4 to 5 different days that we offer, and it's a lunchtime. It's typically for the past couple of years has been myself, the program coordinator, the program director, and then a resident or two. We have some, essentially we provide updates as to, hey, what's happened since you've interviewed, whether that is some new research, some new faculty, some new resident changes into the or what have you. And then we offer it for questions. And so that is what we do. We are very upfront that your participation in a second look is not, it's not like we're going to the back and taking attendance. I do think it's important to go if you're very interested in a program. But we say that it is not necessarily mandatory, but it's completely optional if you so choose to take advantage of it. And if you're interested in a program, I think that opportunity, you should take advantage of it if you're interested in a program.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Elwert. Anybody else on second looks? I don't know if any of the other panelists want to comment on second looks and how they worked on how they work. Dr. Metacherla, did you participate in any second looks, ma'am, last year?
Yeah, I did. They were pretty much set up the way Dr. Elwert had just described, maybe at different times during the day and different sessions and things like that. But yeah, it was pretty much a glorified virtual open house. You could ask more questions, ask for updates, things that maybe you didn't think about when you were interviewing that have now kind of come into play in terms of like the big factors that you have in deciding your rank list. It's nice that second looks kind of happen towards that lull between interview season being over and rank list being due, so that you can have some of your questions answered before you make your final decision.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on second looks? Let me ask this question about letters of interest. I'm seeing a lot more about letters of interest. It's a little bit different than a follow-up thank you, right? Ms. Baez Martinez, let me ask you, ma'am, what do you think about the letters of interest to a program?
Honestly, I don't have an exact answer, because yes, we receive letters, kind of emails of interest from candidates. And we receive people trying to apply outside of eras. How ask saying, "Oh, well, I will really like to be considered for your program. It attaches my CD." Yeah. My standard answer is, we review all applications just at the same time, equitably. We do not, it, and especially if somebody sends you a CD, we tell them we do not accept applications outside of ERAS. We review everything in ERAS, because ERAS gives us, or any matching system, if it comes to that, based on different specialties, now, gives us a way to review everything on the same level for each candidate. Yeah, we take note of those who sent a letter of interest, but still, for me, it doesn't raise or diminish a chance. It's the same level of review that we give applicants through ERAS. And yeah, that's I'm sorry, but I don't have
That's great. That's a great answer. And tying that back into the letters of interest, and tying that back into second looks here. One of our panelists here, or I'm sorry, one of our attendees, I think student Dr. Aguier, is asking here, does not going to a second look hurt an applicant that interviewed at that program? I know I advise our students to go to as many as they can. Certainly, if they cannot attend the second look, I ask them to send and they're really interested in that program, because we know life happens. If they're on a rotation that is scheduled during that, and they're on a shift during that second look, you can't attend everything. Definitely send an email or saying that, listen, I'm sorry, I can't attend the second look. I wish I could be there to attend the second look, because I wanted to ask more about so-and-so, fill in the blank, right? Because that definitely shows your interest. But if you can't attend everything, right? So what if you can't attend a second look? I don't think it's not the end of the world, but you definitely should communicate why you weren't able to attend it. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say about not being able to attend a second look.
I'll add, because it probably
Yes.
prompted my response, probably prompted that question. We are certainly taking note at who attends, but to the point that's been made, we understand life happens. We know you're on rotations. We know that you've already missed some time with interviews. And so, especially if it's a program that you're interested in and you can't make it, I think sending a message, expressing your interest, hey, I couldn't make it because of this, it is definitely important. But that's kind of what the point I was trying to make is we know that life happens. And so we know that you can't go to every single Zoom opportunity that is offered by programs.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Elwert. Let me ask this question. I think this is right in the middle of this slide. I think this is an interesting question, kind of funny, but it is a good question. Is it acceptable to wear the large Studio Beats headphones during interviews? I see Dr. Elwert is wearing he's wearing earbuds. I like to tease whenever I see somebody wearing those. I say they look like that they're wearing, that they're landing 737s at the airport. I don't know. Dr. Rhodes, what do you think about the large headphones? I mean, listen, if that's all a student has, that's all a student has, right? Dr. Rhodes, what's your take, sir, on the Studio Beats headphones, on the big headphones?
That is an interesting question. I mean, I think if you're going to have something extraneous like that, I think maybe if you just throw in a little comment, I mean, obviously, if, it's going to be preferable if you can be in a place where, you aren't surrounded by anything else. There's no distractions, you can really kind of just have your speaker on and have your mic open as much as possible, to where that's not an issue. But I think maybe if that's not feasible for some reason, maybe you're providing a comment saying like, oh, just not a big explanation, obviously, but something like, oh, I had to put these on because the only place I had to go was here on this rotation during this time, and I'm stuck here, or something like that. I think you don't have to make it a big thing, but maybe just a little sprinkle in, maybe since it might look a little strange, if you have a good sense of humor, if you can just kind of, make it a little lighthearted, I think that's probably a way to go. You obviously got to match your response to your personality. I'm kind of a goofy guy overall. I like to laugh and smile a lot. So, I might sprinkle a little humor in with it, but I think most people would be understanding, if that's if you're dedicating, you need to do that to make it the best interview possible. I couldn't imagine it be a problem.
Absolutely. Thank you for that input, Dr. Rhodes. Anybody else? Student Dr. Metacherla, Dr. Metacherla, do you use any earphones? Did you use any earphones or any technology like that when you interviewed?
Kind of going to Dr. Rhodes' point, I tried to be in an environment where I could keep my speaker on, and I was kind of free to talk at whatever volume that I like to the gruntled dismay of my family, but I did what I had to do. I do think that this lends into kind of another related topic of, making sure that you test your background, make sure that there's nothing that's too distracting in your background. I know some people who would put or have certain things in their background that maybe started a conversation in a way that could maybe break the ice. But make sure that it's not super distracting, that the lighting is okay, that your face isn't dark, just kind of some of those aesthetic things. Because in this day and age of virtual interviews, like first impressions do come through the computer. And so you do want to make sure that that is something that is playing in your favor. So not a direct answer to your question, but maybe something related to it.
No, that's very helpful. And listen, I'm gonna channel my inner Zoom IT geek here. Let me tell y'all, if you use headphones, beware that sometimes if you have to switch out to use your computer's microphone, all of a sudden it mutes and it will not connect. You may actually have to go to that arrow, to the caret where it says mute, and find your computer's speaker and start using it there, because it might be trying to go through the microphone that's on your headphones. Okay. So you're welcome for that free IT advice. Okay.
Can I add something real quick?
Yes, please.
So I'm actually going against my own advice that I normally give people. Is
okay.
I would avoid the Bluetooth connection. And that's just because what Dr. Tolentino said is sometimes, Zoom can pull some tricks on us, and all of a sudden we think we're muted and then we're not. And all of a sudden it's like oh my gosh, it's such a long day, right? You don't want to put that on Zoom. But I left my wired headphones at the hospital. And so I'm actually going against my own advice, but definitely I think some wired headphones, if you have to use them, I don't think it's a big deal if it's big old Beats or if it's Bose or if it's whatever brand you have. I don't think that's a big deal. I do think it's a big deal of having them wired or not. but it's worked out so far. The Bluetooth has been okay for me for the moment.
Fantastic. By the way, that was the question. AACOM does not, sponsor nor support, any particular brand of headphones.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elward. On this last slide of questions, you see that we touched a lot on just from the different answers of questions here tonight. Good questions to ask residents and attendings during interviews. We talked a little bit about that. Obviously, stuff that you can look up, that's not good questions to ask. You're trying to get more of a flavor of how, a resident, what the fit is. You're trying to gauge your fit into the program. So I think asking about, life in the community and how you are going to fit into that program and into that community. I think those are great questions to ask, right? I don't think asking about salary is a good question. I don't think asking about call schedule right away is a good question. Sometimes when you ask about questions like that, you get depicted, whether for better or for worse, get pictured as lazy. Oh, they're asking about the call schedule already because they don't want to take call. Anybody here think about good questions to ask?
I will echo on the questions about the community, especially if it's a place you've never been to or don't have any families. I like to, when I do my packets especially for in-person interviews, I go to the local chamber of commerce and get information about the city. Most chamber of commerce have a package with city information, attractions, housing, schools, because we might get somebody who might have school age kids and will like to know what schools are in the area, how good is the district, or they might ask about what proximity to different places are, especially if it's a program in the rural setting. They want to know, what's the closest thing, the closest supermarket, amenities, all that stuff, which are really valid questions, especially when you're thinking of the place you're going to live at for the next 3 to 5 years, depending on the program and the specialty.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Baez Martinez. This last question here about a case report. So we know that a lot of our fourth years are still working on some scholarly activity as they're wrapping up their fourth year, their time at their medical school. And they're probably going to, God bless, get published here or, get some more scholarly activity. Should they update that at the programs that they've interviewed? Your take on that? I'll ask Dr. Rhodes on that.
Oh, yeah. So actually, this happened to me specifically. I had made this large 6-page for one of my audition rotations. I had made this large 6-page cross-reference guide between HIV medications and psychiatric medications, and kind of like, kind of made this whole red, yellow, green thing, and did how which ones had the most cross interactions, because I was working at doing it on a psych team for HIV and AIDS actually at the time at a HIV and AIDS clinic. So when I was very proud of it. I worked very hard on it. I even followed the guidelines for the university I was at, so they could actually use it as an official document. And I think they do. I hope they do now. Anyway, I like to think they do. But anyway, so I was very proud of it. So without trying to be too self-serving, but a little self-serving. I kind of emailed, some of the residents I had kept in contact with, the program coordinator, and kind of phrased it. I'm like, hey, I know we haven't talked in a week or two, or, however long it was, and I would say something. I'm like, but, if you were interested, I actually just created this thing. If you were interested in seeing this document, and kind of phrase it that way, kind of like at your leisure kind of thing almost. So kind of made it as just, for their own reference, if they just wanted to look at it or not. Tried to make that not I really want you to look at this kind of thing, just more of just in case you were interested. And that's kind of how I approached it. I got some good responses from that too. And I think that was a good way, as I kind of said earlier, if you're going to make a question something after, make it sincere. find a sincere reason to reach out. And, you know, so when I kind of did that, I think that was part of it too, is that they showed like, oh, he's doing these things, and, so we could, just something else, another feather in your cap, if you will.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I know that we have gotten to the end of the hour here. We got through most of our questions. Certainly, if you have other questions, please make sure to contact us at gme-initiatives@aacom.org. I'd like to thank our panelists here tonight, Dr. Elwert, Dr. Metichella, Dr. Rhodes, and Ms. Baez-Martinez. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending and wish all of you luck and best wishes during this match season. Good luck.
Good luck, everyone.